only 2 of us came back from that camping trip. The police searched Black Pine Forest for 11 days after Marcus disappeared. They brought dogs, drones, volunteers, everything. They never found a body. What bothers me most is that they kept asking the wrong questions. They wanted to know where Marcus could have gone. But nobody ever asked what followed us home from those woods. The first strange thing happened before we even reached the campsite. It was Friday evening, just after sunset, and the 4 of us were driving north through the back roads outside Millfield County. The highway eventually narrowed into long stretches of forest road with almost no streetlights. Ethan was driving. Marcus sat in the passenger seat fighting with the GPS, while Lily and I argued in the back over whether bringing 1 flashlight each was enough. The deeper we drove, the emptier everything became. No gas stations, no houses, no signal. Just trees. The kind that look black once the sun disappears. At one point, Ethan suddenly slowed the car. You guys see that? About 50 yards ahead, standing at the edge of the woods, was a person. At least, it looked like one. Tall, thin, completely still, facing the road. Nobody spoke for a second. We passed it too quickly to make out details, but I remember Lily turning around in her seat to keep staring through the back window. What the hell was that? Marcus laughed nervously. Probably a hunter. But hunters don't stand motionless in the dark facing traffic, and they definitely don't stay perfectly still after headlights hit them. It looked like someone waiting. 10 minutes later, we reached Black Pine Campground. The place was nearly empty except for an old RV parked near the entrance. The owner's office was closed, but we already had our reservation confirmation printed out. The air smelled wet and cold. Not normal cold. That deep forest kind of cold that clings to your clothes and sinks into your skin. We set up 2 tents near the tree line. Ethan and Marcus took one tent, while Lily and I shared the other. For a few hours, everything felt normal. We made a fire, cooked hot dogs, played music quietly from Marcus's speaker. But around midnight, the forest changed. The insects stopped making noise. No crickets, no birds, nothing. I noticed it first. You guys hear that? Ethan looked around. Hear what? Exactly. The silence felt wrong, like the woods were listening. Then we heard footsteps, slow footsteps, moving somewhere behind us in the trees. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Marcus grabbed the flashlight immediately and pointed it toward the woods, but the beam only reached the first rows of trees before disappearing into darkness. The footsteps stopped instantly. Nobody joked after that. Around 3 a.m., Lily woke me by gripping my arm hard enough to hurt. There's someone outside. I listened carefully. At first, I heard nothing. Then, soft footsteps circling the tent. Not animal sounds. Human footsteps. Slow, careful, dragging slightly through dirt. I could see a shadow moving faintly against the tent wall. Lily whispered, "Don't unzip it." The footsteps stopped directly beside us. Then came 3 scratches across the side of the tent. Squit, squit, squit. Not loud, just deliberate enough to make every muscle in my body lock up. We stayed completely silent. After maybe 30 seconds, the footsteps moved away. I don't think either of us breathed normally again until sunrise. The next morning, Ethan acted like we were overreacting,
Probably some drunk guy messing around. Marcus agreed, but he looked pale. Then Lily pointed toward the mud beside our tent. There were footprints. Bare footprints. Long and narrow. The strange part wasn't the prints themselves. It was the depth. Whoever made them had pressed deep enough into the mud that water had collected inside them overnight. And they stopped halfway around our tent. No tracks leading away. Marcus crouched beside them quietly. Where did they go? Nobody answered.
The second day was mostly normal, but tension hung over everything. We tried fishing by the lake, tried joking around, tried pretending we weren't uncomfortable. But nobody wandered far from camp anymore. Around evening, Ethan disappeared. At first, we assumed he'd gone to the bathrooms near the entrance, but after 20 minutes, Marcus went looking for him. He came back alone. I can't find him. The sun was already setting by the time we split up with flashlights. The woods looked darker than they should have. I remember hearing branches snapping somewhere far behind me while yelling Ethan's name. Then, Lily screamed. We ran toward her and found Ethan standing between the trees, about 30 feet away. Just standing there. His flashlight was off. "Dude, what the hell?" Marcus shouted. Ethan looked at us strangely. I got lost. Something about him felt wrong after that. Not obvious, just wrong. He barely talked the rest of the night. He sat near the fire, staring into the woods like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. At one point, I caught him whispering quietly to himself. Or maybe to someone else? I couldn't tell. That night was worse. At around 1 a.m., I woke again to movement outside the tent. This time, the footsteps sounded faster, more impatient. They circled repeatedly around us. Then came whispering. Very faint whispering. I couldn't make out words, but there were definitely voices outside. Plural. Lily heard it too because she buried her face against my shoulder and started crying quietly. Then Ethan started screaming from the other tent. Marcus shouted, "Wake up! Wake up!" We rushed outside with flashlights. Ethan was sitting upright in the dirt, breathing heavily. "There was someone in here," he said. Marcus looked furious. "You were screaming in your sleep." "No," Ethan snapped. His voice sounded different somehow. There was something standing over me. Then he looked toward the woods and smiled. Just for a second. A tiny smile. Like he recognized something out there. Nobody slept after that. At sunrise, we packed immediately. Even Ethan wanted to leave. While loading the car, I noticed something carved into one of the trees near our campsite. 3 vertical lines. Fresh cuts. Almost like claw marks. The drive home felt tense. Ethan barely spoke. Lily kept checking behind us. Marcus tried making jokes nobody laughed at. When we finally got back to town, everything felt normal again. Street lights, traffic, people walking dogs. The forest already felt distant. That illusion lasted less than 48 hours. The next morning, I called Marcus immediately. Before I could explain, he interrupted me. "You heard scratching too?" My stomach dropped. He told me he woke around 3 a.m. because someone was breathing outside his bedroom door. Not knocking. Breathing. Slow, wet breathing. Lily texted us an hour later. She sent a picture. Muddy footprints leading across her kitchen floor. No broken windows, no forced entry, nothing stolen. We tried convincing ourselves somebody was pranking us, but none of it made sense.
By Tuesday, Ethan stopped answering messages completely. Marcus drove to his apartment after work. Ethan eventually opened the door, but Marcus later told us something disturbing. The apartment smelled awful, like wet dirt and rotting leaves. And Ethan looked horrible. Dark circles under his eyes, skin pale, lips cracked. His fingernails were packed with dirt, like he'd been digging with his bare hands. Marcus asked if he was okay. Ethan stared at him for a long time, before quietly saying, "It followed me home first." Then he shut the door.
That same night, I started hearing footsteps upstairs. The problem was, I lived alone. At exactly 1:47 a.m., the footsteps crossed slowly from one side of the apartment to the other, then stopped directly above my bed. I stayed frozen for nearly 20 minutes before finally grabbing my flashlight and checking upstairs. Nothing. But the attic door was open. I knew I'd locked it earlier.
Thursday night was worse. Lily called me crying around midnight.
There's somebody outside my house.
I drove there immediately. Marcus arrived minutes later. Every light inside Lily's house was on. She refused to look through the windows. Marcus finally checked through the blinds.
There's nobody there. Then he frowned. There's mud all over the porch.
We opened the front door carefully. Bare footprints covered the porch boards. They led directly to the front door and stopped. No tracks leading away.
Lily spent the night at my apartment. Neither of us slept.
At around 4 a.m., we both heard movement in the hallway outside my apartment. Heavy footsteps, dragging slowly across carpet, then stopping directly outside my door. A shadow appeared beneath the crack. Lily whispered, "Don't open it." Then came 3 scratches against the wood. Skirt, skirt, skirt. Exactly like the tent. The next morning, the hallway was empty, but the carpet outside my apartment was wet with mud.
Friday afternoon, Marcus finally convinced Ethan to meet us at a diner near the highway. The second Ethan walked in, Lily gasped. He looked worse than before. His clothes were stained with dirt. His hands shook slightly, and he kept glancing toward the diner windows like he expected something to be standing outside. He barely touched his food. Then he leaned forward quietly. "I see it every night." Nobody spoke. Ethan continued staring into his coffee. "It stands outside my window." "What does?" Marcus asked. Ethan looked up slowly. "I don't know." Then he whispered something that still makes my skin crawl. "It looks different every time."
Lily started crying again. Marcus finally lost patience. "We need to go to the police." Ethan shook his head immediately. "They won't find anything." Then he looked directly at me. "It doesn't want all of us." Silence filled the table. Before I could ask what he meant, Ethan stood up and walked out of the diner. That was the last time we ever saw him. His landlord called Marcus Saturday morning, asking if we knew where Ethan was, because his apartment door had been left open overnight. We drove there immediately. The apartment was freezing cold. Mud covered the floor. The bathroom mirror had 3 deep scratches across it, and the bedroom window was wide open. Police searched nearby woods for 2 days. They found nothing. No phone, no body, no trace. After Ethan vanished, the activity stopped for almost a week. No footsteps, no scratching, nothing. Marcus thought maybe it was over. Then came the final night. It was raining hard outside. Lily was still staying at my apartment because she was too terrified to sleep alone. Around 2:30 a.m., the power went out. The entire building went dark. A few seconds later, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, dragging, wet. Not one set, several. Moving closer, then stopping directly outside the apartment. Lily grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. The breathing started again. Heavy breathing right outside the door. Then Marcus called me. The second I answered, he whispered, "Don't move." I asked what was wrong. He sounded panicked. "It's outside my house." Then I heard him inhale sharply. Oh my God. The line went dead. At that exact moment, 3 violent scratches slammed across my apartment door. Wood splintered inward. Lily screamed. Another set of scratches tore across the door. Then silence. Complete silence. A few seconds later, something slowly began turning the doorknob. I still remember the sound, metal creaking softly in the dark. The lock held for about 10 seconds. Then whatever was outside started breathing harder, almost excited. The doorknob stopped moving. Footsteps retreated slowly down the hallway. Then everything became quiet again. Police found Marcus's back door open the next morning. Mud covered the kitchen floor. His phone was discovered in the hallway. He was never found. That happened 11 months ago. Lily moved out of state shortly after. I still live in the same apartment because, honestly, I can't afford to leave. Most nights are normal now. Mostly. But sometimes, around 2 a.m., I still hear slow footsteps outside my apartment door, dragging slightly across the hallway carpet, stopping directly outside, waiting. And last week, for the first time in months, I looked through the peephole. There was nobody standing there. Just muddy footprints outside the door, and a second set leading inside.